Okay, so I'm glad to be here, and I'm very happy to present this to you guys. Mungkin yang pada belum kenal plug and play itu apa sih? I'll explain to you briefly. Jadi plug and play itu it's an accelerator yang kita fokus di building relationship antara corporates dan startup. Kenapa ini really important? Karena banyak startup yang tidak memiliki suatu case study yang real. Nah, di plug and play, kita membantu startup untuk misalnya connect dengan BNI atau misalnya dengan bank-bank yang besar-besar that gives you a lot of credible and real case study yang you can actually test and you can actually use their users as well. Okay, so this is the difference between us and other accelerators. Thank you. So, plug and play gives you all of this support. We give you the mentorship, we give you logistical support, we provide you with the networking as well. So if you need to fundraise, we partner with almost all the VCs in Indonesia. So you have access to all of them. If you need investments as well, that's where we are really good at fundraising and making sure that your company is well funded. And of course, the expertise, as I talked about, is the corporate innovation. So we make sure that a lot of your product actually fits the market correctly. So we're the early investors in Dropbox, Lending Club, and PayPal. So we already have 3 unicorns. It's a global company. We have all these other portfolio under our investments. You probably heard of SoundHound, Zeus, and the others. So we are a global innovation platform. Essentially, as I mentioned, we're represented in 9 countries. So anytime you have help or you need any kind of a technology that you need to import, we can help you with that. We have a lot of startups that are happening in Silicon Valley, and these startups are very, very advanced, right? So in Indonesia, not everything needs to be innovated here. You can just replicate and just copy that. What matters here is all about execution. So these are the type of stuff that we can also assist you with, giving you ideas, giving you mentorship, also from all the startup founders around the world. We work together with Mercedes-Benz in Germany, we work together with Galeries Lafayette in France, and so forth. In Indonesia itself, we just started, so we're open for application, and you guys can go to plugandplay.co.id and apply. Application's gonna be accepted until at the end of January, and we're gonna start selecting together with our corporates. So these are our global partners. We have a lot of the big brand names, as you can see, and we focus on a lot of the different sectors. But in Indonesia itself, we focus on fintech security, as well as mobile and big data. Again, what we provide earlier is all the accelerator program, cash investments, co-working space, mentorship, fundraising opportunities, and more. So let's talk about UI UX. So this is the part where you guys have been waiting for, right? I'm gonna go deep dive into what is the main objective of a good product. Anybody know?
It should be easy to use.
But okay, he said it's easy to use. Yeah, that's one part. But what is it? What's the main thing, right? You want to actually, whoop, what happened? Hello? You want to actually create a lasting and meaningful relationship with your user. That's your main objective of creating a good product. Because new user is like dating. And returning user is like marriage, right? So unless you're commitment phobic, you don't want that second part. But this is why a lot of dating sites as well, you don't have a lot of returning user after they're married, right? So always emphasize quality growth over quantity growth in this case. So in a product building cycle, we start with an idea. This is where you do your research. We build, we test, we measure, and we gather data, right? Once you gather the data, you analyze and you learn as much as possible from this data, and you rebuild again. You make sure that you learn from the previous mistakes, from all the data and the analytics that you collected. Okay? So by doing that, you will reiterate your product and make it better and better and more refined and closer to the market fit in this case. Okay. So one point that I have to make is in order for you to create a good UI UX, you really have to do a really strong and do a good research. Okay. So what's the good research? It's back to the basics of marketing, right? Marketing 101. You need to be able to know what is your landscape. How does this affect your product? How does the Indonesian economy outlook affect how you're gonna build your product for your user? For example, like in Indonesia, there's a lot of millennials, right? And you have to start thinking of the future, like what are you building? You're building for the millennials. You have to start thinking about 5 years ahead, 3 years ahead. What is it that you want to eventually make your product aspire to be, right? To serve the millennials, for example. You have to think about your industry. Analyze as much as possible what are they doing. If you're in banking, then like analyze what are the verticals that they're doing, what are they solving, what kind of challenges they have. And then finally, look into your competitors as well, they're existing, if there are any. If not, then it's something similar outside of Indonesia. I'm sure in the States you have some of these. Once you've done all that, you start collecting, defining your purpose. You want to know what is the purpose of your product, right? So you ask, what is it for? What's the story? What kind of problem you're trying to solve? What is the value proposition of your product? You define your context, like when is the most user actually using and where is it? So for instance, right, you have a product that you learn and it's a product where you design it for somebody who's about to sleep. You want to make sure that the background instead of white, it's black. And the text is white, right? So that the eyes are not. These are examples of context, like where is the user using it and when are they using it, right? You want to define who the user is. You want to know, like, you want to create personas basically for a user. So what is personas? So persona is like you want to create, okay, I want my user to be 18, teenagers, female. She likes to read books. She goes to college, those kind of things. And finally, you want to define the features. When you're defining the features, this is very important that you define the style guide. I'm pretty sure people who are designers know what style guide is. It's basically all the colors, the font, typography, everything. You want to define all this in the beginning. You want to also define what is the technology stack. This is also important for your engineering team to make sure that it's very easy to scale up in the future. Make sure that like the design as well as the back end really flows well together. Okay, I'll give you an example of competitive analysis. So previously, before I ran Plug and Play, I was doing Seek Me. We really did a lot of competitive analysis. We make sure we look into the competitor's website. We find out from all our as much as we can about them. What are they doing? What's the difference between us in terms of the design, in terms of how they do their business as well. So these are some of the examples that we do. And we learned that like a lot of the things that we do are actually quite similar. We're a service marketplace, so we make sure that it's easy for user to just search for the service that they want. And the product as well as the location. Those are the 2 points that most users actually need are where you're actually looking for a service and what kind of service you have. All right, this is an example for somebody who doesn't know style guide. So as I mentioned, you want to make sure that you have your colors, you have your branding, you have your statement of what is it that your product and your brand want to convey to the public, right? All right, so wait. I'm going to talk about Professor Wiccan's model of psychology here. So over here you can see the diagram, right? We have sensory, which is like how you perceive and how you actually see a product, how you actually see an interface. And usually this information, once you process that, it goes into a perception part of your brain. And that's when you actually start to think about how to make decisions from what you're actually being inputted of all this data. This then translate into a long-term memory, which is what you actually want to achieve when you're building the product. You want to create a lasting memory that they remember of your product, that they come back and use your product over and over again, and they love your product, right? So we're going to talk about sensory. So you can see here is a gas station. So who here, if you actually type in this on the phone number, it's actually very difficult, right? The number is actually not on the right locations. But this is still a UI. There's still that green button which means continue. It's very easy, right? But it doesn't mean that a UI that's like really bad is a good UI. So again, like a UI can be anything, even a bad one, right? But what makes it different is it has to be, first of all, it has to be very simple. So if you have to explain something, then it's like a joke, right? Like you don't if you have to explain a joke, it's not actually that good. So you have to create a product that is very, very easy and very, very is straightforward. So this is called visibility. You want to have a good visibility of your product and to create a correct perception for your product, which I'm going to talk next. So once you have the perception, your objective is to create a long-term memory. And what best way to create that long-term memory is through emotion, right? To make them feel good. So again, like you want to make them understand as easy as possible because our human mind is very limited, right? So think of elevator speech. When you're in an elevator with somebody and pitching to your investor, you only have certain amount of seconds, right? So look at this. There's Airbnb, totally contrasting to that gas station pump. It's very beautiful, very visual, very easy to use. But, okay, wait. So a UI though is not a UX, right? Why is that? Because a UI is, the main objective is to making it easy to use. But you want to make sure that user also feel good. Why do you want to make user feel good? Because that's when they actually remember about your product. It's in your long-term memory. It's the easiest way is through emotion, right? And by doing that, you make a user have a good experience. And that's UX, your main objective. It's all about the combination between the two. So at the end of the day, emotion trumps logic. This is why Donald Trump won, because he appeals to the dumb people, but they all use their emotion mostly, right? Sorry if anybody likes Donald Trump here. So I'm gonna talk next about A/B testing. Okay. So what's A/B testing? It's a scientific method for product development because human intuition is a bad way to solve a complex problem. How do you do A/B test? You want to ask the question. You want to decide what you're actually trying to improve, number one. Number two, you want to construct the hypothesis. What is it that you're trying to build here? What is it that you're trying to improve on your product, right? You want to build the things that might improve it. So you want to maybe like simplify the steps. That could be one. Or build a feature that actually improves the product itself. You want to test your hypotheses at the end, and in this way, there's so many tools out there where you can do a lot of testing. So like Optimizely, Aptimize, Hotjar, you can name it. There's a bunch of them, depending on what you're comfortable with. And finally, you want to measure, and this is the most important part, is to analyze the result. A lot of people, after they measure, they don't know what to do with it. This step is actually the most important because this is the part where you actually learn and you actually bring something to make sure that you can bring this forward and actually improve your product, right? Then you repeat that over and over and over again. It never ends. So this is an example of our first version of the product at SeekMe. There are two versions. We have like one where there are two buttons that people can choose, whether you're a professional or a requester, or just a sign up button regularly. But we realized that at the end, the conversion was just really, really bad from those two. We ended up coming out with a third version that is very simple, just a search bar, and people actually, when they come to our site, they just want to search. They just want to see what is it about this product, about this site. They want to see what are the services that we have. That's the main thing that they want. And we realized that after we make the third version that a lot of this user keep coming back. We also realized that the second part is to make sure that it's easy for user to log in, because the metric that we put in the beginning is how to onboard user as much as possible. So we focus on that metric. We put Facebook login and Google login, but in the end, nobody used Google login. Everybody used Facebook login. We dropped that, and we just focus on that one button. Okay, so there are some questions on when you can't A/B test. It's when you don't have enough users. When you don't have enough users to statistically give a significant result. That's usually like below 1,000 a day of visitor. And when you already have like it's a totally new product. Like, so nobody has ever seen it or tested, or it's been in public. So you want to make sure that you have enough features, you have enough attractiveness for people to actually use your product first, right? So you don't have an excuse to not A/B test essentially. Like, if you already have a product, I'm pretty sure you can start A/B testing once you are out in the public. Okay, so remember, my last point is to create a meaningful relationship with your user is your main point to create a great product. All right, thank you. Question and answer?
Anyone have questions? Okay, wait. Hello, my name is Devita. I'm
Hi,
from
Devita.
Bukalapak.
Yes.
I want to ask about your last slide, actually.
Sure.
Yeah, it's okay. About the meaningful relation to your users, right? How do you measure it? The meaningful relationship. How can you tell that your products already have a meaningful relationship?
When you have a lot of returning user all the time and you have a lot of retention, that's when you really, really see that you have a good, meaningful relationship with your user, right? They keep coming back, keep using your product, regardless of your competitor, they keep coming back to you.
How can you know that it improves over time?
Sorry?
How can you know that your relationship is improved?
I mean, you can tell by the number itself, right? But you can also do the survey yourself and find out about how happy they are. Creating an email survey, calling. You really have to go out there, essentially. You have to meet your user too sometimes. Like, it's not always behind the screen, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good question.
Any other else?
Hi, my name is Raihan, and
Hi,
I want to ask. You said this is about mobile and web, right? So
Yes.
for a product, how do you decide which one to do first? Because sometimes, like for example, Airbnb has both website and mobile app. But if you're limited, like in the first step, which one do you do first? Thank you.
Okay, so thanks. Good question. So the question is, which platform do I go first, mobile or app? Mobile app or web, right? So it really depends on your research in the beginning. Like, if you really don't have a product yet, do as much research as possible. But you already know from the landscape research, okay, it's not here anymore. From the landscape research that what kind of demography people have in Indonesia. They're mostly millennials. They use app mostly, right? You can see from the landscape as well, like most of people are using mobile already. Like, there's a high penetration of mobile. So all this research gives you the assumption. Once you have the assumption, you can test those assumptions using your hypothesis. That's when you start testing, okay, let's build a mobile app and let's test it if this hypothesis is true. That's really how you start deciding whether you want to go with that platform or not. But the best way is really just to build the minimum viable product, the very, very bare minimum of your feature, and then just start testing it, right? Maybe for the particular solution or product that you have, you don't need mobile app. At the end of the day, like after you test it, oh, it's not, my hypothesis is wrong. You pivot right away, build it through other platforms. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Oh,
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Maruti. When we want to develop mobile application from web application, what thing that we should consider about UI and UX for migrate from web to mobile application? And is there any tips or to simplify we know that web application there are many feature or many menu, and how we can simplify to mobile web, which is have a smaller screen different from desktop. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. So essentially, I think you're asking about how to create a consistent design, right? So creating consistent design means that you have to think first about the paradigm, right? What is the paradigm of people? Paradigm is, for instance, in Android and in iOS, the paradigm is that in Android, the navigation's all on top. In desktop, navigation's on top, right? But in iOS, it's all on the bottom. So think about the paradigm first, right? Like what is the first underlying paradigm that people actually use? As well in mobile, it's moving more and more towards the bottom navigation anyway. So these are the paradigms you have to think about, the trend as well, the shifting in paradigm that you have to think. In terms of sizing, it's all about making the buttons similar, the style and everything. But I think the most important thing is my first point about the paradigm shift first. Like you have to think about that. The second part is like making the designs consistent. Your iconography, your buttons and things like that. Make it as consistent in terms of style as much as possible. Yeah. Anybody else?
Next question.
Okay,
Yep.
my name Reza Surya from Brawijaya University. I want to ask you about when we first on develop anybody else product, which is that's a web or application. If we, do you think we need some UX or UI expert for developing it, which means it can create a good relationship then. For what else? Like make a good design. When make a good design.
Oh,
which
kalau
is-
susah pakai bahasa Indonesia aja. Saya bisa.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Gue bukan orang bule.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a problem. Intinya kayak ini, sebuah desain itu kita membuat relationship itu perlu orang yang jago UI UX atau kita bisa belajar sendiri dari pengalaman kita atau gimana? Itu aja.
Ya, jadi sebenarnya depends ya situasinya juga. Kamu misalnya tim kamu co-founder siapa aja, yang resource kamu seperti apa, ya kan? Tapi essentially this thing can be self-learned sih. It's not like okay, just because he's an expert, then you can't be at that level too. But over time, as a founder, and if you're building the product itself, you learn. That's why you're doing startup, right? Is to learn. So it's not necessary that you have to have a UI and UX expert at the beginning. You test it. You keep testing. You keep learning, right? It's like one of the diagram before that I showed is about learning in the end, and then like building it again. So you can keep improving and keep testing yourself.
So maybe if you still have any more question, you can directly ask Nayoko, maybe after this session. So since this is the last question,
Yes.
Thank you so much, Nayoko, for having us in Product Stage today.
Thank you,
Everybody, please applause to
Thank you.
Nayoko.